Pokemon Scarlet 151 is coming soon, and today I wanted to highlight my most anticipated cards from the set. I'm Jeff from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, let's talk about this upcoming special set, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet 151. It's releasing on September 22nd, 2023, and it features all 151 Pokemon from the Kanto region. This is the first time that the Pokemon Company is releasing all of the Pokemon of a generation in one set, which is absolutely amazing. I have a ton of nostalgia for this era of the Pokemon trading card game, or just Pokemon in general, and I think a lot of you will have that feeling as well. And regardless, even if you don't, if you play the trading card game, there are a lot of cool cards that could shake up the meta that I'd like to cover today. So let's get into it. First one on my list is Mew EX. I actually have, can you give me 1 second? I'm so excited for this card. I actually bought the Japanese version at a convention the other day, and I'm not gonna be able to put in decks or anything. I just like it because it's a Japanese Mew EX card, which I thought was really cool. Anyhow, Mew EX is a psychic Pokemon with 180 HP. It's a basic. It's got the ability Restart. Once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 3 in your hand. Nice little bit of draw power, and if you happen to have multiple Mew EXs on the board, you can use this multiple times, like 1 per Mew. And it's also got the attack Genome Hacking for 3 colorless energy. Choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. So, for example, you could copy Giratina V-Star's Lost Impact, and all of a sudden now you're hitting for 280 damage. You could copy Trinity Nova from Arceus and accelerate energy to your Pokemon V. There are a lot of wacky possibilities that open up with Mew EX, and here's a couple of examples from Japan that use Mew EX, Lugia being one of the big ones, where you can use Archeops to accelerate special energy to Mew, and then you just kind of have that as an attacker that could do all sorts of weird stuff. Of course, it's going to depend on what your opponent is using, but Mew EX gives you like a whole other dimension for attacking while also giving you a little bit of draw power as well. Here's an example of it in the Palkia, the Baxcalibur deck, where again you can use Baxcalibur to charge up Mew, and Mew gives you a little bit of draw power here as well. Here we have it in the Miraidon deck, and Mew kind of gives you a psychic attacker. I think this is actually kind of cool because lightning types are weak to fighting, and this gives you an attacker that is strong against, it's going to hit fighting for weakness. And on top of that, you can use Flaffy to accelerate energy to Mew, which is really nice here. And here's another one with the Shadow Rider Calyrex. I know this is a weird build that also has the Arceus in it, but Shadow Rider Calyrex can accelerate energy to Mew, and it can go from there. There's also a new Xatu card, which just got revealed, and Xatu can accelerate energy to Mew EX as well. And I could even pair, now that I'm thinking about it, with the new Mewtwo EX. Like, that's a whole that's a video for another time. But yes, Mew, anything that can accelerate energy, Mew EX probably has a home in, and I'm very excited to see all of the possibilities with that card. Blastoise EX has the ability Solid Shell, where it takes 30 less damage from attacks, making it essentially a 360 HP Pokemon. It's going to be incredibly difficult to one-hit KO for most decks, and it has the monster attack Twin Cannons, where you discard energy, up to 2 energy for its attack, and you do 140 damage per energy you discard. So this can hit the magic number of 280 damage, which is going to take out V-Star Pokemon in one go. And you're also taking out like EXs, like basic EXs, and pretty much all of the stage 1 EXs as well. So this becomes an incredibly strong attacker. And I think the format is in a good space for a deck like this to work, because there's so much energy recovery with the likes of cards like Energy Retrieval and Superior Energy Retrieval. It's not that hard, and this deck example here with the Palkia lineup even has Energy Search as well, and you can search that out with Erika to get that card, making this deck even more consistent. Oh, just also wanted to point out Letter of Encouragement here as well. One of the newer cards, I believe from Obsidian Flames, where if one of your Pokemon gets knocked out, you can play this card and grab 3 energy from the deck. So lots of ways to load your hand up and discard energy to do massive damage with Blastoise. Charizard EX I'm not as excited for, but there are ways to make this work. It does have the attack Brave Wing, does 60 damage, and if this Pokemon has any damage counters on it, this attack does 100 more damage. So 160 damage for one energy is pretty good, and we can use cards like Magma Basin to get that initial damage on, which is great. You could also potentially share a loop here and just heal over and over again, only doing 160, which is kind of cool. But the big attack here, her 4 Fire Energy, Explosive Vortex, 330 damage, and discard 3 energy from this Pokemon. I think because of the high energy cost, you're probably only going to run 1 or 2 of these, but it could very well pair well with the current Terra Charizard EX that accelerates energy here as well. So I would imagine that this would work primarily in a Terra Charizard deck, and then you've got the sort of one of Charizard EX as a tech to get like a massive one-hit KO at a certain early in the game, maybe even a late game as well. But yeah, that's one of the possibilities for this new Charizard. Wigglytuff EX can increase its HP by 100 if you attach a special energy to it, making it a very tanky 350 HP Pokemon, which again is going to be very difficult to one-shot. And it also has the attack Friend Tackle, does 90 damage, and if you play a supporter on your turn, you do another 90 damage. 180 damage is going to help you two-shot everything in the game, and if you've got the special energy on there to increase your HP to 350, this is going to keep you in a lot of games. Here's an example list with Wigglytuff. We also have the Mew EX in here, a Radiant Charizard, even the Snorlax, the one that goes to sleep and does 180 damage. And we've got the Therapeutic Energy in here to make sure that it wakes up. And we even have an appearance of the Paldea Evolved Wigglytuff here that accelerates Therapeutic Energy on your, I think it's once per turn. This spot is for Vileplume, but I also want to include Gloom here as well because it has a similar ability. With Vileplume, you look at the top 8 cards of your deck and attach any number of basic energy cards you find there to your Pokemon in any way you like, which is absolutely nuts. And Gloom is not bad either. You look at the top 3 cards of your deck and attach any energy you find there. So this is going to be good for high energy decks that need a lot of energy. And here's an example I found with Rayquaza VMAX. I know Rayquaza is not the most meta relevant Pokemon, but its big problem is energy acceleration up until now, and this particular deck could potentially solve the issue. You don't have to move Rayquazas onto the bench. You can accelerate them while they're in the reactive, and yeah, you get to accelerate potentially a ton of energy with a build like this. So whether it's Rayquaza VMAX or another archetype that requires a lot of energy, this could be great. Alakazam EX is one of the coolest Pokemon in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet 151. Its first attack, Mind Jack, does 90 damage, and it does 30 more damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So this caps out at 240 damage, and 240 damage with only 2 colorless energy is pretty amazing. But the attack that has everybody talking is Dimensional Hand. For 2 psychic energy, you do 120 damage, but you can also attack from the bench, which opens up some really weird possibilities that we have not seen in the Pokemon trading card game before. Here's an example list from Japan, and the idea is kind of to using like walling off Pokemon in the active while Alakazam can snipe from the bench. We've got the Mimikyu that stops attacks from Pokemon V and Pokemon EX. We've got the Klefki to stop ability-based Pokemon. We've got the Stall Snorlax that forces your opponent to not be able to retreat. And then, yeah, the idea is get your opponent in a position where they can't attack Alakazam and you just snipe them from the bench, which is very cool. Dodrio has the ability Zooming Draw. Once during your turn, you can put a damage counter on this Pokemon, and if you do, draw this card. It's a little bit of draw power, but it opens the doors for certain archetypes that need damage on the bench to really function. Here's an example list with the Dodrio in action, and this is a Zoroark V-Star deck, and of course Zoroark V-Star needs damage on its Pokemon. The more damage that's on the bench Pokemon, on its Pokemon period, the more damage that Zoroark does with its attack. And with the Gengar being able to damage itself, with the Dodrios being able to damage themselves, it is way easier to get that damage on the board so that you can more consistently attack for big damage. Another archetype that benefits from Dodrio's presence is Tyranitar EX, and not only does it get that damage on so that Tyranitar can hit for 250, it's also a draw engine in and of itself as well. This is actually an archetype I've kicked around a couple times. I really don't like how Tyranitar EX plays right now, just because whether you're playing the Lucario build or the Gengar build, it's really weird to get set up, but Dodrio feels like the perfect fit for Tyranitar EX. Wheezing is a weird one. It's got the ability to explode together, where if this Pokemon gets knocked out, you flip a coin, and if it's heads, the attacking Pokemon is knocked out. I think there are going to be people playing this as a troll to try and uptrade on multi-prize decks and win the game off coin flips, which is obnoxious. I personally hate it, but it does also have the attack Spinning Gas, two colorless energy, does 50 damage, and this attack does 10 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, which works great for a deck like Samurott V-Star, where you need damage on your opponent's active Pokemon in order to unlock the maximum damage Samurott V-Star's attack can do. So it's just another way to set up that initial damage here for Samurott using Wheezing. Starmie's kind of it's different, but it does kind of have the same effect as a Wheezing here, where once during your turn you can put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, and if you placed any damage counters this way, discard this Pokemon and all attached cards. Again, for any decks that need to get that initial damage on to unlock another damage threshold, like a Zoroark V-Star, Samurott, even Meowscarada. Aquatic Enigma is a really cool ability for Starmie, because this not only hits the bench, it hits the active as well. We're not going to use its attack at all, but just being able to drop the damage counters can make a massive difference for certain decks. For example, the upcoming Greninja EX from this is being sold as an EX battle deck separately, where it does, I think, up to 240 damage if the active Pokemon already has damage on it. Your opponent's active Pokemon has damage on it. And we're going to be using Starmie in this deck to set up the initial damage so that Greninja can swing for maximum damage. I think it's 240. I could be wrong, but it's going to do like double the damage ish if you have the Starmie dropping damage counters on there first. So very cool idea there. Here's another one, this time with Samurott. Yet again, man, Samurott is eating good after the next set, which is nice because I really like Samurott, and it's been kind of sad not being able to make it work, but Starmie could be the answer to its troubles. Jynx EX has the attack Heart-Stopping Kiss for water and 2 colorless. If your opponent's active Pokemon is asleep, it is knocked out. We're not going to use its Icy Wind attack at all, but the Heart-Stopping Kiss is a potentially incredible move that can uptrade against a lot of other decks, and here's an example of it in a Palkia-based deck, but we do have the Hypno here, and the Hypno has an ability that lets you put your opponent's active Pokemon to sleep, which is when you would bring in the Jynx and knock it out, and we're using Palkia's Star Portal attack to accelerate energy and get the big KO that way. Ditto is a very cool card, and I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen more of this in Japanese lists, but maybe in the international meta that will change. Its Change Start ability lets you, on the first turn, if you have benched or put this Pokemon into play, you can discard this Pokemon and change it with a basic Pokemon on your bench. So in examples where you really want to start with a very specific Pokemon in the active, like a Lost Box where you really want Comfey in there, or an Arceus deck where you want Arceus, this kind of acts as an extra version of those cards, which is very nice. Here's an example list. Again, I'm not saying go play Arceus Greninja V Union, but here is an example where we are using the Ditto to act as a 5th Arceus V, making it easier to get set up. Zapdos EX is another cool attacker for the Miraidon deck, and with its ability Bolt Float, if it's got any lightning energy on it, its retreat is free. And this could potentially take the place of the Zeraora right now in the Miraidon deck. Yes, you're going to have to attach energy, but this becomes a tankier retreat card that also has the potential to attack, and its attack is not bad here. For 3 lightning energy, multi-shot lightning does 120 damage, and it also does 90 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So imagine you get the initial damage on to one of your opponent's comp phase, and then you bring in the Zapdos. Turn 1, you could potentially snipe 2 comp phase in one go. We've got the Halucha in this deck to get the initial damage on. We've got the electric generators to attach energy to the Zapdos, and then we can retreat with escape rope or switch to potentially get that turn 1 donk in that way. But regardless, having a snipe attacker in the Miraidon deck that can also hit the active is really nice. Moving over to trainer cards, Big Balloon is some really nice support for stage 2 Pokemon, where when it is attached, this tool card, stage 2 Pokemon just have no retreat cost. Not like the Air Balloon where it lowered it by 2. This just no retreat cost, regardless of how heavy your stage 2 Pokemon is. You can just retreat it for free, which is very nice. Cycling Road. Once during each player's turn, that player may discard a basic energy card from their hand, and if they do, that player draws a card. In any deck where you want to play something other than Radiant Greninja, you can use this as a pseudo way of getting energy into the discard pile while also drawing energy as well. I still think this is not going to put Radiant Greninja out of business or anything like that, but for any deck that wants to have something like this without running Radiant Greninja specifically, for example, you're running a deck that requires Alakazam, or Radiant Alakazam, or Radiant Charizard, this could be a cool alternative. Energy Seal. Flip a coin. If heads, attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. Yes, it's tied to a coin flip, but I always love seeing ways of accelerating extra energy, and this is not necessarily the worst. I think this will see a little bit of play here and there. Erika's Invitation is an incredibly annoying card. Your opponent reveals their hand and put a basic Pokemon you find there onto their bench, then switch that Pokemon into the active spot. It's like an insane boss's orders that draws from your opponent's hand and yoinks them all the way into the active. I don't know how many decks will really benefit from this, especially when there are going to be times you play this card and they just don't have any basic Pokemon. But there are some very cheeky plays you could make, even potentially game-winning plays, where maybe you just need to get that one prize and your opponent has all multi-prize Pokemon, and then you can just use this to pull out a Manaphy straight into the active and just KO it that way, which is very cool. Giovanni's Riz. Put an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon into their hand, and if you do that, you get to attach an energy card from your hand to your active Pokemon. I believe this also, the way it's worded, this also counts for special energy. So attaching special energy could be great, but really here, the combination of extra energy acceleration for you and energy denial for your opponent make this a very tantalizing option. Rigid Band. The stage 1 Pokemon this card is attached to take 30 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. So any sort of stage 1s, I'm thinking like the Zoroark box deck, among many others, will benefit from having a little extra bulk to them with this card. Safety Goggles is a really interesting card. It nullifies weakness for basic Pokemon. I think this is going to benefit bigger, bulkier Pokemon, something like a Miraidon, and taking out fighting weakness for something like that. I don't know how many decks are going to run this, but it could be very annoying if this becomes a popular card, nullifying weakness in certain archetypes. Last but not least, Snatch Arm. Your opponent reveals their hand, choose a Pokemon you find there, and put it on the bottom of their deck. If you want to play like a control archetype or have a control element to it, again, this is a card that may not work if they don't have any Pokemon in their hand, but it is an item card, so it's not like you're losing too much when you play it, and in return you are potentially shutting down your opponent's ability to set up, which is very obnoxious. Again, this set is out on September 22nd, 2023. I am really excited for this set because it feels like it's got a lot of cool cards that are going to add a lot of new dimensions to the current game. But what about you? What are you most excited about? Are you just excited because it's a Kanto set and you get to see all of your old favorites all together in one set? Are you excited for the collector value of these cards? again, I kind of dipped a little early. I bought a Mew EX just because I like having Japanese cards, and having a Japanese Mew EX just felt right to me when I saw it. So really happy to have this in my collection, and I can't wait to potentially pull an English version when the time comes. But for now, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching. Some quick plugs before we get out of here. You can find me on all the things, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at In3rdPerson. You can find me on Twitch at In3rdPerson, where I stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And check out the website, in3rdperson.com, for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. So until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.